right, folks, it's time for world politics. And of course, we've got all kinds of things to talk about, including this notion of muted microphones and whether that is going to be important or not important. I do know that there are some folks that were willing to do that. And now they are saying, I think ABC, that if things get a little bit lively, that they might unmute the mics and everything. But I don't think Kamala's people were all that pleased about this notion of the muted microphones, because we do know that next week will be the big debate and all along those lines. So folks are looking forward to that. And one of our past guests has put out an article in the New York Times, and he has made his predictions clear and all along those lines. So I've invited him to come back on the show. I invited him to this particular show, but I know it was short notice and all along those lines. So maybe he'll be on a World Edition or one of our other ones as well and everything. But definitely, we do know that Alan Lichtman has been on our network as well. And of course, we know that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are scheduled to debate on September 10th. But the 24th presidential election is already in the bag, at least according to Alan Lichtman, who we've had in the show before. He's the American University historian who has been dubbed the Nostradamus of presidential election predictions for his near-perfect 40-year track record. So he was among the few to accurately predict Mr. Trump's victory in 2016, earning him a Sharpie scribbled note from the candidate lauding the good call. And immediately after the first 2024 presidential debate between Mr. Trump and President Biden, Mr. Lichtman was also quick to warn that Mr. Biden dropping out of the race could be a tragic mistake for Democrats, leading him directly into an online battle with the forecaster Nate Silver. So the confidence is rooted in Mr. Lichtman's simple history-driven model, which tunes out polls and pollsters and instead focuses on 13 true or false questions that he says holds the keys to the White House. So definitely that's what he's saying. And apparently right now he has come out and said that Kamala Harris is going to be the presidential candidate for 2024 and all along those lines. And I know that there's some other folks on the network that have agreed with this notion. There's others that have disagreed with it. So I want to bring the man from Naked at Night, who's looking quite naked and everything, as well as our founder of the network and all along those lines, as well as Sasha Starr. And like I said, I did get an email directly from Alan Lichtman saying the call is in. And he said that he had put it out. Unfortunately, we got it like early this morning. And by the time I reached out to him, it was probably too late for this particular show. But maybe he'll appear on one of our World Editions. But as y'all know, he's been on a couple of our shows. And he's saying that Kamala is the person that can win this race and all along those lines. So what is our thoughts?
It's 105 here, so I'm wearing my Naked at Night outfit. But he's got 13 keys. You need to hold a majority of the keys. He says right now Harris has 10 of them, though she could lose a couple of them depending, but still that gives her 8, which is still more than half. I think it's still too soon. We have 61 days to go, and her lead in the polls is a little over 3%. Hillary had a 5% lead going into the election. Biden had a 10% lead. So if she doesn't, I know polls are garbage. I always say it, but I still think she needs to poll a little bit better.
Well, I think no matter who wins the election, they're going to have to deal with some serious financial problems the United States has to, and they're going to have to deal with it. Somebody, they maybe will skate in the next 4 years, but somewhere between now and the year 2035, 2036, they got to deal with the demise and demolish of the American fiscal system, the way it's structured. And they don't bring it up. Dave Walker brings it up, and he's right. And it's just a matter of time. Right now, it's a slow drag on the economy, but as time goes by, it could be a huge drag on the economy, and we're going to look at some serious problems going forward. There's already predictions. You can predict Kamala Harris as the president. It doesn't matter. There's already predictions. Your grandchildren will live in a worse country economically than you did. Your children will. So as generations go by, the United States will be a worse and worse place to live.
But a weirder place. Remember, we didn't have cell phones until like 2008. I mean, smartphones. And now there are 7 billion smartphones in the world. We didn't have all these streaming. So we may be poor, but we'll be more entertained.
Well, yeah, you're right.
I'm glad you brought up cell phones. Because speaking of cell phones, The other interesting article that I saw earlier today was actually a compliment to some degree on Kamala Harris, because apparently Kamala Harris is not a fan of Bluetooth and all along those lines and everything. And part of what she's been doing is been doing wireless communications, and that's what people are seeing her doing when she is rushing to the phone and everything. And part of what I know Rex Lee, who also has a show on this network, has been touting for ever since this network came about, in my mind and everything, because I think Rex has been involved with us for a number of years, Nick, if not the entirety and everything. But he talks about cybersecurity, as does Merle Gerlison and everything. And part of what is the reason that people are saying that it is a good thing that she doesn't use the whole kind of old-fashioned Bluetooth is that it is easier to eavesdrop using those devices. So they're saying that the wireless phone is a safer phone, and that is one of the reasons that she is probably doing well in the sense of using wireless technology versus Bluetooth and some of the others that are easier to eavesdrop on. So I know that Sasha has been in the military of Russia, and he's definitely had some experience probably with the spy culture and all along those lines. And I know that Rick has definitely had some experiences with TV spying and all along those lines. So what is our thoughts around this notion that maybe she is being smart because she is using something that is less easy? And I'm not saying that you can't hack it, but it's less easy to hack.
No, there's no privacy. Sasha agrees with me. The only way to have privacy is just to keep your thoughts in your head and don't say anything that can get you in trouble.
And or live in a desert island. That would work. But let's take a look and see how the Kamala Harris presidency is going to work. Let's take a look at immigration. Okay, how'd she do on immigration? Well, the borders were porous, and people just come pouring in from the borders. 2 million people a year, illegal immigrants. Are we going to continue that policy or not? And the debate's going to tell us more than anything, because I'm positive that this is going to be brought up by the Republicans.
Well, it's difficult because it's already been brought up, because Ted Cruz is claiming, because that's another article that I saw earlier today, that it is a conspiracy that Mexico and Kamala's campaign are coming together in this joint effort, because he's talking about, I think the Mexican president said that if there are legal immigrants or people that are coming in on a legal kind of way, that they will provide a bus to get them to the U.S. border. So Ted Cruz recently came out with a video that was very critical of Kamala and was saying that this was a conspiracy on that side. And we know that Ted Cruz can be a very interesting person as well, but I do know that he came out and was critical of this Mexican proposal.
Okay. So let's say she gets elected, how she can do in the economy. How about this? Higher inflation, higher taxes, and more debt. Okay, is that what Americans want? Well, if you vote for, I guess that's what you want, because that's been the history.
Okay, higher taxes for your clients who are worth more than $100 million.
Yeah, but I have very few clients that are worth 100 million.
All right,
more.
10 million.
Right? So the thing is, if they pay higher taxes, let me tell you something about that joke. If they pay higher taxes, it's not going to solve the problem. There aren't that many.
There's not. There aren't enough mega rich people to.
Exactly. So here's what's going to happen: more debt. They're going to pile on to the younger generation more and more debt, and they're going to create what Joe did: more inflation. Because face it, the Democrats can't balance their bloody checkbook. They're $2 trillion. $2 trillion.
Well, Trump is no better. Trump wants to give. I've heard him accused of it, and he wants to give another multi-trillion-dollar tax cut to your clients.
Yeah, well, that's the reason I'm going to Europe, because the thing is, you look to the other side, they're not complicated.
Just really quickly, because I wanted to get to what Ted Cruz said, just so the folks will get an understanding of what I was referring to. But apparently, Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz accused of Vice President Kamala Harris of working with Mexico's president to encourage the flood of illegal immigrants in the U.S. in a bid to shift the U.S. further left on the political scale. So he said Kamala Harris wants more illegal immigrants in America. He said this on his podcast, his own personal podcast, Verdict, on Monday. Just about every single congressional Democrat in the Senate and the House, they want more illegal immigrants in the America. They are actively encouraging, facilitating, and accelerating the invasion of our southern border. So now the government of Mexico is
garbage. Look, neither party. The last time we had comprehensive immigration reform was 1983 under Reagan, 41 years ago. The only way to get immigration reform is for one party to get enough of a majority in the House, the Senate, plus the presidency to implement some reforms. But even with however many million immigrants are flowing in, we're not having sex. We're not making babies. We're making 20% fewer babies to keep, America's population stable. So even with the immigrants coming in, our population isn't growing. We're watching TV. We're tapping away on our phones. We're not banging. So it's not that big a problem.
Well, you said that.
Yeah, but
I just wanted to come back to his quote and everything, because he's saying that the government of Mexico is actively aiding and assisting the human traffickers, and there are some folks that say that human trafficking is a big concern, and he says that they will provide bus rides through Mexico along with armed escorts from police and soldiers to bring illegal immigrants to the border.
So it has been Kamala Harris's job. She really isn't the border czar as much as she's the liaison between the U.S. government and Central and South American governments. And her job was supposed to be going to these governments and saying, how can we make your countries less shitty so we have fewer people leaving them and trying to come into our country? Has she succeeded in that? Not great, no. But,
okay. All right. And there's other things that neither party has succeeded. If you're around, anybody here is going to be around about 10 years from now, you're going to watch your Social Security. And by the way, this comes from the Social Security website. For those who are listening, your benefits will be cut and you'll only get 76% of your benefits in 2035. I'm not making this up. This is on the Social Security website. And here's another thing on their website. Medicare goes broke. It's extended now, by the way. It used to be sooner than this, but now it goes broke in 2036. Okay, these are two major problems that neither party is addressing, as instead they're spending all their time with, oh, he's a Republican, he's a Democrat. They're doing the American Beauty contest. In the meantime, they're leaving the Americans right down the road to perdition, the road to trash. Yeah, Reagan.
So LA has 73,000 homeless people. I guarantee we will figure out a solution in the next 4 years, because we have the 2028 Olympics, and we can't let the streets be filled with the homeless when the whole world is watching us. So we'll figure out a fix. Similarly, it might not be a great fix, but it'll be some kind of fix.
Have they thought about building more homes? See, this is what was one of the funny things, that some of these problems have really easy solutions. Now, Kamala Harris was, give everybody 25,000 to go buy homes.
We won't get it done unless
build more homes.
We won't get it done by then. And plus, not every homeless person wants to be in a home. Some of them.
That's correct. But the thing is, you have to.
But it's the same thing with Social Security and medical. Let me finish my argument.
Yeah.
Boomers are this huge demographic bump, and the youngest boomer is 60. So we're not dying off at a great rate yet. So we have a ton of political power. So we're not we have so much political pull, and we have all the money. So we're gonna make the political contributions. We are gonna buy the politicians and force them to figure out some way to fix Social Security and Medicare. It might be a crappy way. It might just be printing more money, which is inflationary and really further screws Gen Z and the millennials. But we won't go broke. Those in the 2030s, because there are going to be too many boomers still left alive.
I had a quick question for Nick. You brought up a very interesting idea and everything, and I've heard this idea tossed by Kamala Harris. I've even heard it tossed by some Republicans and everything. But assuming that the issue is that there are not enough houses being built and everything, and that you've got these homeless people that don't have a house to live in, who's supposed to pay for the house that the people are getting and everything? Because if you can't afford a house, then how are you supposed to afford the rent or the mortgage for a house? So I'm trying to figure out exactly how this works.
So, all right, so LA has tried a couple things. All right, the deal is that a homeless person costs the government more on the street than they do if you put them in a place rent-free, because somebody on the street is getting high, getting drunk, getting in trouble, and dealing with that person on the street costs tens of thousands of dollars a year. To you put them in an apartment now. So LA has tried taking these crappy downtown hotels that nobody goes to anymore and turning them into housing. And we've tried building little storage shed houses that are like 8 feet by 8 feet, and we have clusters of those, and that works kinda. But we haven't figured out how to do it for cheap yet.
And that's the issue, because they did that during the pandemic. I remember during the pandemic, some people were living in abandoned hotels and were living in other places that were definitely available and all along those lines. But then after a while, people want to make some revenue off of those buildings and everything. So that's my question: is if you build them, who's going to pay for it? Are we going to have the government?
Have the government pay some reasonable price, because they're still saving money if you've got the people who are uncrazy enough to be housed. Because let's say 1/3 of homeless people are too nutty to stay housed, but 2/3, which in LA would be 50,000 people,
Right.
just need housing. You house them, you let them get jobs, because it's much easier to get a job if you have an address. And so the way what we've been taught in city government is 1/3 of homeless crazy, 1/3 of homeless substance abuse issues, 1/3 just bad luck. So
Okay. But the thing is, having inadequate housing, starting with housing will actually start solving the problem, Rick. And the Chinese were really good at that. They would actually build one building that'll house 50,000 people. The United States could do the same thing. You could do that in California. You could build one big, huge building in
the issue
Southern
isn't
California.
the issue is the law, which offers people, regardless of whether they're crazy or not, the freedom. You can't hold like a crazy person for more than 72 hours.
Yeah, right.
They don't
But the
want
thing
to
is,
be
you can give the crazy person options. In other words, let's imagine that in LA they built a 5,000 room place for homeless people. They could do that. And the thing is,
you need a ton of security guards, because a big chunk of the people in there would be like misbehaving.
That's right. But the thing is, you have plenty of people to hire, because, as you just said, 1/3 are crazy, 1/3 are drug abuse, and 1/3 are bad luck. Well, the bad luck people just got good luck. They have a job now. Okay.
Yeah, and you
Which
just got to
is
keep
to take care of this
the
place.
lunatics away from the bad luck people who just want to work.
Hold on a second. If I'm hearing you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know here in Durham, North Carolina, we have the Durham Rescue Mission, which is basically like a kind of like a dorm kind of situation, or a dorm environment. And I do know that, yes, you can get housed in that environment if you are homeless. I'm not sure of all the rules and regulations. I do know one of the rules and regulations is that you have to be out in the early mornings trying to find jobs or all along those lines, even though some of those people wind up going to the library and masquerading like they're looking for a job and everything. So are we thinking that even in Los Angeles that we could have this big barrack type environment, if I can use the military kind of background, that the people would be living in these barracks while they are trying to find jobs? Because that sounds very similar to what the...
So you can't insist that everybody gets a job. A lot of people want to get it, but like even a person who's like just borderline crazy to the point that they can't keep a job can be housed. And
Right.
the murder wall that every crazy person sets up in a movie, or an obsessed detective, they put up all the things and they run threads to say somebody's a lunatic like that. That's fine. House them. Let them work on some crazy theory. Let them work on their crazy art. But they're housed, and they're
housed, right? I agree. I absolutely agree.
Hold on a second. What would we do for the issue of health? Because one of the issues that happens even in some of those environments is part of what happened during the pandemic and everything, is that sometimes the showers are very open. The showers are very much in a open environment. There are a bunch of people that look like Rick looks like now and everything, but they're not always the most healthy kind of environments and everything. So you could literally create almost another pandemic or a healthy issue if we all got them in there and they are not adequately maintained. And I'll just
basically you need. Sasha wants to talk, but basically you have concierges. You have
Yeah,
people
right.
whose job it is to work with the people and tell them if you want to, like, that's how it works now in LA. You make the police officers and volunteers go out there and they say, if you want a hot meal, you
Yep.
go here on these days. If you want a
Right.
shower, you go here on, the church opens up for showers on
Yeah,
Wednesday.
it can be done if you have enough willpower. It can be done. Yeah, Sasha.
I'm surprised to listen to your discussion because you don't understand. Majority of these people haven't held a job, probably never in their lives. And even if you house them, they will not, majority of them will not have jobs, any jobs for that. So there will be no income whatsoever. So now, okay, obviously it's all rent free. So now they need to provide a soup kitchens of some kind so they could all eat also for free. So essentially, you're creating some kind of all-inclusive lifestyle. So when you are going on all-inclusive vacation, you have hotel, you have food, you have a beach, you have everything what is there. So in a way, it will be a version of all-inclusive lifestyle where you, for free, because in my case, I have to pay for all-inclusive vacation, but in this case, you don't have to pay anything. You have place to stay, you have free meals, you have free medicine, because otherwise how is it going to survive? So there has to be some entertainment. So you have to provide at least computers, television sets, electricity, at least that. Some gym facilities, so they have to exercise every day. And what else? And if you can accomplish all that and do all that, then you solve the problem. Except that if you're crying that US will run out of money in Medicare and everything else by 35, in this scenario, you will run out of money 5 years earlier. That's what I would imagine.
Yeah, all right. It looks like Idiocracy, the movie Idiocracy, where every 300 years in the future, civilization is barely hanging on because everybody's gotten too stupid to really do anything. Mm-hmm. But the deal is with AI, and you're part of the problem, Sasha. You're paying for NVIDIA. NVIDIA is making machines that'll eventually be smarter than everybody. So by 2030, machines will be able to do 51% of jobs. So Nick, you asked what the world of our children looks like. And so, yeah, okay, so we're poor, but we're also chock full of freaking robots doing a lot of
and I'm not talking about building the Taj Mahal for homeless people. I'm talking about a 120 square foot house, something really small, Sasha, something that's habitable. It's almost a crime that these people are homeless. I mean, you're supposed to be immune from cruel and unusual punishment. What is more cruel and unusual than to be sitting out on the deck somewhere getting rained on? And we can't afford it.
You're absolutely right. You have to also provide nutritious meals besides the house.
Okay, but food in the United States is pretty darn cheap because we produce a lot.
But some
we produce so much food, we throw a lot of food away.
You're right.
So meals are not a problem. But the thing is, the willpower. And what's so great about a job? I mean, come on, Sasha. Look at your job. All you do is you shuffle money around and stick it in your pocket. You call that a job? I mean, the thing is,
it's entertainment. It's not even a job. I mean, job, you must have some responsibilities.
There's something great about having a job. There's nothing great about having a job. But there is something great about solving a problem. And you can actually solve the problem. There will be an asset there, which are these houses. They'll be extremely low income housing. And you get those 73,000 people off the streets.
But Nick, isn't part of the problem that some of the institutions that can solve the problem don't want to solve the problem. Because I know that one of the things that frustrates me, and I'm just going to be very transparent about it, is that if you go down to any city, I don't care if it's Los Angeles where Rick is, or if you go to around North Carolina where I'm at and everything, you will see a number of homeless people that are sleeping on their church grounds and everything along those lines.
Yeah, it's Mark, it's totally wrong.
Part of universities. So my thing is that why can't the church open their doors to some of these?
Look, this is a government function, and I'll tell you why. As we talked on this show, your government spent $60 billion to buy computer chips, to hand it to the computer chip industry, to send money to companies like NVIDIA that make people like Sasha rich. It is not our job to supply NVIDIA with $60 billion. We sent hundreds of billions to Tesla to build these stupid stations across the country. We spent another $60 billion. This is the Harris administration. This is the Biden-Harris administration.
I think we only spent $7 billion on the charging stations.
Charging stations. Well, I saw it to be a lot higher than that. But also they spent billions of dollars. Not only that, on SpaceX to send people up into space and down into space. So Elon Musk could be rich. Now, how much do they spend on LA housing to get rid of these?
There are 4 issues with LA housing that immediately come to mind. One is getting developers to build it, because when developers build a place, they want something they can rent for $4,000 a month. We're fighting with developers who only want to do 15% low-income units for converting the Sportsman's Lodge Hotel into condos. And when they say low income, they mean $2,000 a month, which you still have to have a decent job to afford $2,000 a month. And
yeah, but
thing one. Thing two is you have to build earthquake safe. Thing 3 is we in California, we want to build green. So the code book, the building code book has gone from this thick to this thick. And the 4th thing is water. That even when you've got, like, the Southwest, is all the water of the Southwest comes from the Colorado River, which is not a big river. So if you got to figure out how to irrigate everybody.
Okay, now you said all the problems that are all solvable, but I'll also give you another solution out there. It's called the Army Corps of Engineers. Now, for the people who don't know, the administration spent over $1 billion building housing and building office buildings in Afghanistan. Billions of dollars went to Afghanistan to build huge office buildings that right now, you know how many people in America it serves? 0. They could turn that Army Corps of Engineers over to your crazy city of LA and build the bloody housing. Then you don't have to worry about the stupid developers. You don't have to worry about all the profiteers.
That's right.
Because we have a budget for it. We have a budget, $800 billion. But the real problem you have is the Democrats refuse to do something to help the American public. Because if Kamala Harris was to say, this is what we're going to do, we're going to solve this problem, I would vote for her. But that is not what she's saying.
She makes noises in that direction. Now, there's Sasha earlier today was talking about how we need a draft. People serve in the military.
Yeah, sure. There you go. That would work.
What we could do is have national service. And you can go into the after high school or before you turn 21 or whatever, you can go into the military, or you can work for the Corps of Engineers building houses.
I'm talking about mandatory service for 2 years. And a lot of these people who are in mandatory service, sometimes a lot of them are actually in different armies around the world, are used to, for example, build the housing or some other jobs, not necessarily straight military jobs, but they're doing that as a part of their service. Nick, I checked about NVIDIA relationship with U.S. governments.
Yeah, how much money is it?
Besides the fact that U.S. government is suing NVIDIA almost like every 4 or 5 months, NVIDIA entered the partnership under which NVIDIA is providing U.S. government entity with $30 million and units with artificial intelligence. So it's vice versa. It's NVIDIA is helping U.S. government. It's not getting any money. Intel is a different story. Yes,
Intel took the money.
A lot of
Yeah,
money.
different story.
From their
Yeah,
government.
yes. Well, have we thought about stopping corporate welfare and actually providing a service that people need, which is housing in the United States of America?
Nick, I would like to ask you and all.
I don't need a stupid computer chip that goes
I would like to ask you, say 200 years ago, were there homeless people in the United States?
Yeah, of course, they've always been with us, but not to this extent.
And how it was worked out? How was it solved 200 years ago?
I don't know. I wasn't around 200 years ago.
We opened the
I'm around
frontier.
today.
You rushed west and you got your 40 acres.
Yeah,
Okay.
40 acres and a
But
mule.
here's
Those
another
people-
way. Here, let me do another benefit for national service. You make it co-ed, and you get all the incels out of their mom's basement, and you have them building a house next to a girl. They learn how to talk to girls. Girls learn how to talk to boys. They make couples. They make babies. If we're worried about native-born Americans not making enough babies, then have co-ed national service, which would be like, we used to have singles bars. People would go out and have to talk to people in bars in order to hook up. Make national service America's new singles bars.
Yeah, and now you have the labor force that we're worried about to take care of the homeless because of the national service. Rick, we have the Army Corps of Engineers that can build the bloody thing, and we actually would have something that America could be proud of, which is no homeless people in this country. There's absolutely no reason this country should have one person who's involuntarily homeless. It should not exist.
Sasha, to answer your question, because I looked it up and everything, homelessness in the early 1800s and everything was used more along the lines of tramps and people that were traversing the country in search of work. So they were actually trying to, because America wasn't as urban as it is now and everything. So they were literally like hobos and others that were traveling around that were trying to find a job or something, because they said that fewer than 7% of Americans lived in cities prior to the 1820s. So it was that growing industrialization that made these urban environments that then kind of created the homeless situation. So it didn't really become an issue till more like the late 1800s, early 1900s, and everything along those lines. Because definitely in the early part of
America has had huge migrations. Though maybe the last big one was, I think they even call it the Great Migration, where Black people in the South were fed up with Jim Crow and just being treated like crap. And they all moved to these giant Midwestern industrial cities like Chicago and Cleveland, and to work in the factories and build decent lives for themselves.
And how they were finding housing? When, let's say, you arrive in Chicago, say 100 years ago, and then you do what?
They lived in tenements and townhouses, and they probably had crappy conditions.
Friends and family, if you ever watched the old play Raisin in the Sun, which dealt with some of what you're talking about, great migration, everything, then there were people that were staying with friends and family.
And today's homeless people don't have friends and family? That's what you're saying?
Some of them don't.
Some of them don't. Right, exactly. And
Yeah. But Sasha, remember when you were in the old Soviet Union, when you were in Odessa, how many homeless people were in Odessa? Were there tens of thousands of homeless?
I don't believe so. At least
Did you see any homeless? Did you see any homeless under the Soviet Union?
But,
you see any?
But Nick, part of what happened is
there were a lot of people
but
who
part
were
of what happened is we talk about
suffering
there
financially.
are a lot of issues that
But I
cause
don't believe
homelessness.
there were homeless people because, again, some of them were getting together with their friends and some basements, for example.
Okay, did you when you were in Odessa? Did you witness any homeless people when you were there?
On the streets?
Yes.
Not really. I don't
Oh,
recall.
not really. Well, I can tell you in Durham, at this place I'm staying, there was a bunch of people that were homeless. They had to come underneath the railings here, but there's only 118 homeless people in our city. It's not like
Well,
LA,
I think
there's
it's more. I
73
think it's more than that
housing.
here in Durham, North Carolina, because even down from H-Town where I
Because no
work
one
at,
can
and
afford to
everything,
live in LA.
you don't just put a big fence because of the homeless situation. But
Yeah, that'll work.
one thing that I was
Yeah,
going to
let's
add.
put them
Hold on a
in
second, Nick.
fence.
One thing that I was going to add is that a number of things happened because I remember going to DC because there was a major homeless shelter, like a soup kitchen that was run, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, even though he was somewhat famous and everything. But there was a lot of factors, including AIDS, including what y'all have been talking about, which is the deinstitutionalizing those that are mentally ill, including high employment, including an adequate supply of affordable housing, and the deep budget cuts to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and Social Services agencies. They were actually helping a lot of the homeless. So the 80s is when this modern era of homelessness occurred, and everything has been going on now. Well, we're talking the 80s to 2024, so it's been going on for about 40 and something. 40
I looked up homelessness in Russia, and we don't know, Russia, isn't obligated to tell the truth.
Yeah,
But according to, they had 11 in 2021. They had 11,000 homeless people, supposedly in the entire country. I don't know if I believe that, but if you're homeless in Russia, I'm sure Putin has a job for you. There's a huge employer to the south of the country. That's the Eastern Front in Ukraine.
Absolutely, and a lot of people are going there just for money, the only one purpose. Now, statistics, I don't think that Soviet Union had statistics of homeless, because according to their doctrine, there were no homeless people in Soviet Union.
Yeah, the workers' paradise. Everything was freaking great.
Paradise, yeah. Of course, it's a huge stretch. But you know what? I would like to improve, Rick, on what you were saying before. That only those would get housing, a couple who has at least one kid. So there has to be encouragement of them to have kids, and if they have two kids, they will have a two-bedroom apartment. If it's three kids, it's three-bedroom apartment, and so on and forth. And of course, they will have more access to so-called soup kitchen, and they will have more meals, and maybe they have upgraded menu, and so incredibly, you're coming to all-inclusive lifestyle.
I'm surprised that you're mentioning this and everything.
We're looking at
correctly and everything. Did the Chinese try that at one point? Because I think the Chinese had this rule about how many kids you could have or how many kids you couldn't have and everything, and that is definitely a very communistic government and everything.
But it's 100% different approach. They were trying to decrease the number of kids, so each family was allowed to have only one baby. And what I just offered is it's a minimum one baby, and the more babies you can create, the better conditions you will get for your family.
So it is an issue in the state of California, which is low-income apartments for bigger families. And one thing that's being tried is there's a building code rule that if your building is more than 2 stories, you have to have 2 ways out of the building, because buildings, used to burn regularly. So you needed another way to run if half the building is on fire. But buildings are more fireproof now. So if you get rid of that rule and you only need 1 staircase down, that means you don't have to turn every apartment building into a shotgun arrangement, and you can actually build multi-bedroom apartments. So solutions are being looked at. Whether any of this is implemented, who knows?
So why don't you leave it to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump to solve all these problems with Medicare, with housing, with all that? Why do you worry about it?
Because we have the least of, because the Congress is tied. It's got almost an equal number of Republicans and Democrats, which means it's the least effective Congress in history. They've passed maybe 70 laws, which is how you make changes in America, versus 300 to 500 jobs for a normal Congress.
So you believe that your discussion will solve that the Congress will act differently?
No. Sasha, this is not even on the drawing boards. First of all, the media very rarely brings this up. You know why the media doesn't bring it up?
There's
Who's
no
going to
money.
pay for the advertising revenue?
There is no money.
There's no money in this.
Nick,
Okay.
I
got
told
it.
you many times that your issues with debt and with the
That's
Medicare
right.
and how to money and all
There's
this
no money in it.
issue. Nobody wants
That's
to
right.
discuss it. Nobody wants to talk
That's
about it.
right.
Nobody wants
That's
to
right.
listen about it. So
That's
then
right.
you're imposing on people some
It
concern,
doesn't mean
and
it's
you're
not
not
a
even being
problem.
paid for it.
Right.
So I
It
just
doesn't
don't
mean
get
it's not a problem, and it doesn't mean it's not going to go away. I can guarantee you, as we sit here today, there will be more and more homeless people in LA because you're not addressing this problem. I
100%.
won't be in LA. I'm going to be on the Mediterranean in my beautiful terraza overlooking the sea and reading about all the homeless people in LA as it keeps going higher and higher and being a really horrible place to live because they're on every block because the American public will not deal with it. And it doesn't mean the issue is not going to go away.
Here's one way to solve it. We have a ton of vacant office buildings across the United States,
Sure you do.
but it costs out
A
the
lot
butt
to
to convert office space to
convert it.
living
Very
space.
expensive.
But
I-
here's how you do it. Here's because I talked to my brother about this, and the problem is plumbing. It's insanely expensive to replumb an office building. So what you
Right.
need is AI-driven robot toilets. They're not connected to plumbing.
Oh, okay.
You poop in your toilet all day, you pee in it, and then at the end, while you're sleeping, the little robot toilet goes down a secret passageway and dumps its junk in the tank and then gets filled up with fresh water and comes back to your apartment.
That would be very
Along the
innovative.
same lines,
Yeah.
what is our thoughts? Because, like I said, I know that Nick just mentioned it because he's around the corner, literally from one, just like I'm around the corner from that same one, but on an opposite end and everything. But what do you say about the fact that a number of universities, including Duke, including North Carolina Central University, which is an HBCU, including definitely State and UNC, don't always use their maximum office space as well? So is that a place that we can actually have the people staying at and everything? Because I'm thinking that not every building, even at the highly esteemed Duke University, the highly esteemed Harvard, are being used to their maximum capacity. So
Grad student housing, married
Absolutely.
student housing, and maybe because of the engineering problems, maybe you have to share a kitchen with 2 or 3 other families or units. You know,
Yeah.
but it's doable. And if you're in college, I mean, dorm rooms are crappy. They're not the height of luxury.
It's true. That's what I'm saying. We're not saying that these homeless people are going to be sheltered in the Taj Mahal. We're talking about a 120 square foot apartment. It's really small, maybe 70 square feet. I mean, you're not talking about anything that's huge or big, but at least it's a roof over their head and a bed with a pillow. And, you know, it's better than what they have right now, which is they're sitting on the sidewalks. I mean, that's absolutely
Or
ridiculous.
they're in beat down RVs. You get an RV for like that's on the verge of not running for $3,000, and you find a
Yeah.
quiet street or in an industrial area where you don't have people with houses to get pissed, and you live in your terrible RV.
Yeah, right. But you have something as opposed to nothing. And the real thing is politicians aren't interested for a lot of different reasons. Number one, there's no money. There's no graph they got. Number two, those crazy people don't vote. Oh, so there's no voters there. So when you look at it from a politician,
well, I don't know. I know some crazy
and also it's a hard problem to solve, Mark.
It is
I mean,
all
the
from
thing is-
but I do know some crazy people that have voted, including voting for different candidates. But you actually bring up an interesting point and something I was going to get to earlier, and it could be a benefit to Kamala and everything. But if there are a number of people that are traveling around, and I do know that there are a number of people that are traveling around, as Rick just said, in their vans, in their cars, and a number of other things. But apparently the price of gas is now going down, and it's predicted that it will be going down all the way till the November election and everything along those lines. So it seems to me that if you are traveling in your car or in your van, then it is now become a lot easier for you to get around because the gas doesn't cost nearly as much as it did before and everything. So is this maybe a win for both the homeless as well as a win?
The game for the homeless with an RV is not to drive around. It's to find a street where you won't be hassled.
Right. Yeah, but the thing is, we have to have a
something
discussion. I'm willing to bet this debate. You're never going to bring up the homeless situation, Mark, or Rick. I'm willing to put money on the wood. The game goes good. That no questions will be asked regarding homeless people.
No, it's like 12th on the list of things.
It's like it should be way high priority. How are you going to solve problems? Because leaders need to solve problems, or at least have ideas to solve problems. And the media has a responsibility to bring this issue to the forefront. Neither one's happening. So my prediction is totally different. LA is going to become the worst place to live. San Francisco is going to be horrible.
But Nick, Andy, maybe Sasha's got some ideas. Because I've had some friends that have been in that position of being homeless and traveling around in their cars, and sometimes they play what I call the dodging game, because they're going to various parking lots and going to different things, and some of them are even in corporate environments, which means that then they have to dodge the police and the security in order to kind of like borrow their services there, because sometimes they even wind up borrowing the internet and other things that people are using in those environments and everything. So what would you do in those situations? Because I know some people that have been in major cities like New York, DC, Florida, California, and they literally are bouncing from office building to office building, because as you know, even in RTP, which is here in the Research Triangle, after 5 or 6 o'clock, a lot of those buildings are abandoned. Now, some of them have tighter security than others and everything, so it's easier to get into some. I would not try to get into the NCIS, which is a federal agency, and I actually had the pleasure of speaking there about 2 months ago, and I know that there was some interest in security, because they have like airport security even to get in there, and I'm sure that security exists even after hours, but not everybody is as tight as that, because that's a federal agency.
People do what they can. We just had a Planet Fitness is the biggest new gym chain across the U.S. You get a basic membership for $10 a month, which means you can live in your car and you can shower at Planet Fitness for 35 cents a day.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, living in your car just doesn't make any sense to anybody. That's what I'm saying. We do need to build.
Yeah, it's
awful. I know. We need to build housing, and it needs to be in there. Do you know, I'm sending some paperwork because I get my dog over to Spain, to the FDA, and my wife tells me, "Oh, the Federal Drug Administration. Do you know they have 3 million square feet office in the FDA? That's how big our bloated bureaucracies are." Now, if I went to you, Rick, and I said, we're going to build a building in LA, 3 million square feet. How many people can it hold? You have to do a little math on that.
That's 3,000 square foot units.
Yeah, so we don't need them. I'm talking about 120 square foot unit, 100 square foot unit.
That's 24,000. Well, you've got halls and everything.
Really?
It's 20,000. 120 square feet.
This is how big the disgusting Washington, D.C. bureaucracy is. For one building in the bureaucracy called the FDA, you could take 30,000 people off the streets of L.A. and house them. Seriously. One building in Washington, D.C. called the FDA. This is how I'm saying. There's problems, there are solutions, and then there are people that are ignoring the problem and not even looking at the solution. Those people are called politicians.
To be fair, Harris has been talking about, now she's not talking in detail, but she wants to expand America's housing stock by 3 million units, which is 2%. America has about 150 million houses and apartments.
But the problem is, as you know, if she goes to the developers, all they want to do is build $1 million homes for millionaires. They're not interested in the bottom line, because the bottom end, there's no money in it. We already know.
So you have to throw money at them. You have to give them incentives.
Well, that's the reason you need the Army Corps of Engineers. You need the National Service. You need a policy, and you need to build housing for the poor. And these aren't Taj Mahals. I'm talking about 100 square foot housing. And then you just soak up all the homeless people, and they'll have at least a bed and a chance to get a job. Right now,
Nick, you just brought up a very interesting point, and it's something that I have been advocating for a number of years and everything. But I get frustrated when I see a number of developers that build buildings knowing that they are going to build more than they can actually provide. So I agree with you that the homeless is an issue, and that that's going on. But even here in this area, we've got a a lot of apartments that are not at anywhere near maximum capacity, and yet they keep building more buildings and everything. So that's where I get frustrated when I'm saying,
Don't look at real estate developers to ever be the
stuff,
solution
even
to
though they
this.
have no intention of filling them.
Mark, never look to real estate developers to be a solution to this problem. They don't give a rat's rear. I started my career back in 1984 with real estate developers. They only care about one thing, and that's making a lot of money in their pocket. That is it. Like I said, there's no money in this. There's no money in this. But what happens is it's something that can be done. It's a problem, and we can solve the problem. But the people who are interested in making money at this stuff, it ain't going to happen. 100 square feet.
But is there money in
With
building
the people who
something
can't
that
afford to buy it, forget it.
But is there money in building something that you know you're not going to have maximum rentals in? Like if you build a
No, there isn't that.
if you build a 1,000 unit,
This
but
is
hold
the
a second.
scourge of
You build
capitalism.
a 500 unit and say you charge 1,000 and only
You can't
250
charge
of those are
anything. They
occupied.
have no money.
That
Okay,
seems-
Mark.
Huh?
You can't charge them anything. These people are broke. They have no money. They have no job. They don't need a job. They can stay there for free. And I know the Republicans hate that 4-letter word, but with all the corporate welfare that's out there, they better wake up, because this actually solves a problem in America.
At the
And we need to do it.
Nick, at the beginning of the hour, you mentioned what the world of our children will look like and grandchildren. And one thing it'll look like is the Matrix, because
That's true.
people will be living in virtual reality. And,
That's
you know,
true.
like my wife needed a comfy chair and she was looking at office chairs. The sales guy says, don't get an office chair, get a gaming chair. People who do
Right.
gaming, that's a super comfortable chair. You can stay in it for 12 hours without your butt hurting. And so
Yeah.
what do you, in 120 square feet, if you're spending 10 hours a day in virtual reality, you know that your job is in VR, your entertainment is in VR, your sex is looking at smut in VR. You
Yeah.
need a bed, you need a toilet, you need a crappy little kitchen. You can fit
Right.
it all in a dorm-sized room.
Right, exactly. And the thing is, and then you get them off the streets of New York, you get them off the streets of San Francisco.
But also, like
off the
some
streets around the world.
kid who's got some job in computer coding is making $150,000 a year. That kid, if he's or she is living in VR, that kid might be perfectly happy in a crappy.
Right. But generally what would happen, once they're in these houses and they start making money, you're going to move, get a better house.
I've got a quick question for Sasha, because you keep bringing it up, and I know that it's one of your big issues and everything. I'm not knocking it because that's part of who you are and everything, Rick, and everything. But how big is the VR and the AI world, as well as the world of pornography in Russia and Ukraine? Because like I said, every time Rick's on, he's always talking about this notion and everything. But I know that there's probably some. I know there was a whole Eastern European market of trying to sell Ukrainian women to Westerners and everything, but that was decades ago, and maybe even more recently and everything.
I don't know. I haven't looked at statistics, but the world of AI smut moves so fast. In this novel I'm writing, I was going to have Russia infiltrate the porn industry and use it to make Americans more effed up in the head, but I don't think there's any reason for Russia to try that, because porn moves so fast now that Russia couldn't even keep up, and it's already as screwed up as it could possibly. I saw a new variation today that, like, somebody decided they wanted to make porn with women whose butts are like hairy man asses. It's like, who you know, like, how would you even do that with real people? And like it's moving so fast. I would think that that it's maybe squeezed out some human traffickers, because the people in AI smut are not real people. But I don't know. I mean, there are people like Andrew Tate, who's this MMA a-hole who's been accused. I mean, there are still going to be pimps and kidnappers, but I'm hoping the market for that kind of stuff is being eroded. And you're muted.
On all this conversation, Sasha, it's on you. Everything we still got about 5 minutes to go.
No, was to discuss that. There is a lot of human trafficking and sex trafficking and whatever is in Russia or Ukraine or anywhere, and it's all done through Telegram. This is by far the best mean to it, and it will keep going. What is there to discuss, really?
Here, I'm going to Google. See if so.
While you're Googling, I did have a
If you this is something people may not know, but if you Google something now, the first thing you see is an article written by AI to respond to your specific question. So the AI overview says human trafficking has seen both increases and decreases in different contexts. So the number of victims identified by the UN Department of this stuff decreased by 11% year over year from 2019 to 2020. This was the first time in 20 years that the number declined, but that was due to the pandemic.
Just really quickly, because I did have a question for Sasha while you're looking that up and everything, because we got less than 5 minutes to go and I got to do Coco's show. You mentioned earlier this notion of public service or military service and everything, and Rick had mentioned the idea of what some people would call human service, or kind of like the Peace Corps and everything. So in your mind, Sasha, would it only be military service, or would you allow people to do stuff that might be something that is more along the lines of 2-year service in the Peace Corps, or something like building homes like Habitat for Humanity or something like that? Or would it only be military conscription service in the way that you are envisioning things?
Well, there is very difficult to compare any other service to military service, because military service is number one is discipline. Number one is a chain of commands. So people are learning how to live together under the strain of hierarchy, the command, the discipline, and when you are working together with the people from other parts of the country, people who are very unlike you, I'm talking about race, I'm not talking about nationalities, I'm talking about different financial background and so on. Is that what makes America a unique country, when all these people feel like American and helping each other? And that's only possible in a certain environment. And in my opinion, military is far the best what there is to it, to abhor it. Otherwise, there is no sense of a nation today. People are so divided, political parties, race, nationalities, financial status, areas where you live, or so on. So there is no real nation. I really don't see it today in America.
You have to sell it to a majority of the population, so they vote for it. And we're more selfish today than
you don't need. Today, president, according to the Supreme Court, has absolute power to do anything by decree, for example. But it doesn't apply to Donald Trump only. It applies to Kamala Harris if she will win presidency. So she can do whatever she wants.
We'd have riots during the Civil War when Lincoln instituted a draft. There were riots in the cities. If you're going to have some kind of national service draft, then you're going to need to offer goodies to people, like free college education.
There are a variety of means to offer the people. Absolutely, I agree with you. Of course, there have to be incentives. For example, each Russian who is going to fight on Ukrainian front, he's being paid, I think it's 200,000 rubles, which is, I even don't know, it's what, a couple $100 or something. And so in US, if you're going to military service, you can get possibly, $500,000 a month. So at least a lot of people who cannot find a job, this is like a healthy alternatives. And this is my problem with this housing, what we discussed earlier, is that you have to provide people with the means to survive. Because even if you have a free housing, which I can't imagine how anybody can afford to provide free housing, and it's not for a month, not even for a year. So you build something and you provide, and you have to maintain that. So you have to have a maintenance available there, and it's all what for the rest of their lives and their children and grandchildren. This is what hurts me, that on this program, instead of discussing something meaningful, something what makes sense, you're discussing absolutely garbage ideas. It's a garbage first rate. There's no other words to describe what you just spent an hour on this program. But anyway, thank you very much.
Well, today's been world politics, and we talked about that, and Nick brought it up, as did I, and everything. Who knows what the conversation will be on Thursday and everything along those lines, but definitely everybody has the right to believe on the conversation and how the conversation went and everything. But right now it's time for us to end, because it's time for Coco McMillan show and all along those lines. So we're going to get on out of here.
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.